Ventilator Blues. Back in the lounge, Robbie uncovered a cache of reel-to-reel tapes in the cupboard below the tape machine. "I'd be happy to stay down here forever," Robbie said. "The future of mankind is, inside your jumpsuits, I said. "I wonder what time it is," Shan said. "It is time to begin the rebuilding of the universe with hybrid Austin Shan baby offspring," I answered. I did not want Shan to think about leaving the silo. Robbie held up a box with a glossy black and white photo printed on its cover. It held a real copy of Exile on Main Street. "It's a miracle. This is like heaven," Robbie said. "Eden," I corrected. Exile on Main Street, according to Robert Breeze Jr., was the most brilliant rock album ever created. In Eden, it is permanently the 1970s, Robbie affirmed. "I never want to go home again," I said. Robbie wanted us to spend the night in Shan's silo. He said, "Let's sleep here tonight." "I'll cook dinner," I offered. The opportunity was daring and thrilling to me. My heart raced with the thought of an Eden slumber party. Shan said, "I can't spend the night with two boys. What would my mom say?" "She would probably say for you to use condoms," I said. "Shut up," Shan answered. "You're right, Shan. Eden needs us to not use condoms. It is our duty to populate planet Earth with our handsome Iowan children," I said. Robbie threaded the new tape into the machine. Robbie and I smoked. The three of us were having a beautiful time in Eden. We laughed, and I drew pictures of Shan and Robbie in their jumpsuits dancing together. I asked Robbie to recite Dulce et decorum est, and he did. It was beautiful. I wanted to watch Robbie kiss Shan. I wanted Robbie to kiss her the real way, like I would, but there was no way Robbie would just do something like that. The song that played was called Ventilator Blues. Everybody walking around, everybody trying to step on their creator. Something always happens. Here's what happened while Shan and Robbie danced together, and I fantasized about watching Robbie put his tongue in Shan's mouth. Johnny McKeon stepped out into the alley at Grasshopper Jungle. Johnny carried up a cardboard banana box someone had left behind in the garage for a foreclosed home in Ealing. Johnny McKeon intended to toss the garbage into the same dumpster that Hungry Jack ate from at least once per week. Hungry Jack's real name was Charles R. Hufford. Charles R. Hufford was born in Indiana and had served in the United States Army in Vietnam, where he participated in the extermination of an entire village of women, children, and elderly people. Hungry Jack was now a claw-armed, 6-foot-tall praying mantis thing, and he was waiting in line to fuck Eileen Pope. Eileen Pope had been breeding all day, and she was near exhaustion. Eileen Pope was also a claw-armed, 6-foot-tall praying mantis that had just eaten her most recent sexual partner, the Hoover boy named Devin Stoddard. Devin Stoddard kneed me in the balls on the previous Friday when he and his friends beat me and Robbie Breeze up for being queers. I was pretty sure I was not exactly queer, but I was not certain. Devin Stoddard was born in Crete, Nebraska. He once got fired from a part-time job bagging groceries at the Hy-Vee for smoking marijuana in a parked car when he was supposed to be gathering shopping carts. At that moment, Eileen Pope's husband, Travis Pope, was inside the pancake house, which looked as though it had been fire-hosed with blood and ground meat. Travis Pope ate 9 people inside the pancake house. It was a terrible mess. Travis Pope had been very hungry after fucking Eileen all day long, ever since they had hatched out of the wreckage of Travis's Nissan truck. Travis Pope also enjoyed the sugary taste of spilled imitation maple-flavored syrup on raw human beings. Travis Pope had never been a huckleberry or a blueberry syrup man. The imitation maple-flavored syrup served by the Pancake House was made in New Jersey. At the same time, Johnny McKeon opened the back door from attic to cellar consignment store, Eileen Pope clamped her 4 bristly upper arms into the woven fabric on the sofa in Grasshopper Jungle, while Grant Wallace impregnated her over and over and over. Hungry Jack and the 2 remaining Hoover boys, who were also now claw-armed 6-foot-tall praying mantises, postured and hissed with their toothy arms erect, sparring over who would get to deposit his semen inside Eileen Pope next. Eileen Pope was nearly finished getting pregnant. She was fertilized as fertilized as a genetically modified cornfield in Kansas, and was getting ready to lay millions of squirming eggs. Eileen Pope was still hungry, too. Eileen Pope decided she would eat Grant Wallace soon, and then she would go find a dark, protected place to build her foaming mass of eggs. Johnny McKeon did not notice the breeding swarm of bugs as he walked out into Grasshopper Jungle carrying his box of refuse. The box Johnny McKeon carried was full of VHS porno movies. The movies were made in a place called the San Fernando Valley, which is near Los Angeles, California. Johnny McKeon did not enjoy watching pornography anymore. He had grown out of that preoccupation. Johnny would have given the tapes to Ollie Jungfrau, but Ollie stayed home from work at Tipsy Cricket Liquors that day. Ollie was lucky. Ollie Jungfrau would have wanted those movies. Ollie was a connoisseur of porn, and especially enjoyed sex films from the 1980s, which was when these particular ones had been made. It was just past 8 on Thursday evening. Ingrid was still sleeping beneath a desk in my bedroom. Will Wallace was driving home from the Tally-Ho in Waterloo. Will Wallace was drunk. He glanced at himself repeatedly in his rearview mirror and thought about the young man from Vinton, Iowa, who'd been hitting on him during happy hour at the Tally-Ho. The man who'd been hitting on Will Wallace was a paramedic. He was handsome and lonely. Will Wallace wondered what it would be like if he tried being queer. He had never experimented when he was a teenager, but he tried to imagine himself doing something sexual with the handsome young paramedic from Vinton. Will Wallace was drunk and excited by the thought. He was very horny by the time he got to Ealing. Will knew he'd have to do his wife as soon as he got the chance. Will Wallace had had a vasectomy. He thought about buying some condoms at the Tipsy Cricket Liquors just in case he ever got especially drunk and daring with anyone in Waterloo. Will Wallace tried calling home on his cell phone, but there was no answer. Sometimes his wife got angry at him for coming home drunk after hanging out at Waterloo, Iowa's one and only gay bar. Will assumed his wife was not answering her phone because she was mad at him. The actual reason she was not picking up her phone was she had been eaten by Grant Wallace, who was at one time Will's son. Will Wallace decided to make amends for flirting with a gay man. He stopped off at Satan's Pizza and ordered a surprise stand preem for his wife and children. For dessert, he thought his wife, whose name was Dorothy, would like something sweet and alcoholic. So Will Wallace drove across the street to Tipsy Cricket Liquors, where he planned to buy some condoms for himself and coffee liqueur and vanilla ice cream for Dorothy Wallace. It was not such a good idea. Here is what happened at Grasshopper Jungle while I watched and dreamed about Shan and Robbie dancing together. Johnny McKeon dropped his box of VHS pornos at his feet. He said something like, "What the hey?" or "Ain't that strange?" when he saw the 6-foot-tall bugs that buzzed and vibrated around the abandoned sofa in the alley. Johnny McKeon never cursed. Eileen Pope was crunching her way down through Grant Wallace's triangular head. Grant was still pumping his semen into her oviduct, and his pinchers clamped rigidly into Eileen's thorax. One of Grant Wallace's arms broke off, and it flexed, open and closed, wriggling in the stew of piss and insect semen on the asphalt of Grasshopper Jungle. Tyler Jacobson, one of the other Hoover boys, who was now a 6-foot-tall, tooth-armed monster, picked up Grant Wallace's twitching arm and began eating it like a massive stalk of celery. Roger Baird, the remaining Hoover boy bug, attempted to mount Eileen Pope and impregnate her as she ate Grant Wallace, who was also still joined with Eileen in the final act of making future clusters of little Grant Wallace larvae inside her. Hungry Jack rotated his head toward the sound of the crashing box of porno tapes. His arms spiked high, and his useless wings flared out from the carapace coverings along his backside. It was an impressive and threatening pose for a large male mantis. Then Hungry Jack came scuttling straight across the alley at Johnny McKeon. Will Wallace was just pulling up to the front of the Tipsy Cricket Lickers. He was horny and drunk, and inside of his Volvo smelled like a Stan Preem. He did not even notice Travis Pope standing in front of the pancake house. Will Wallace just took Travis Pope for someone having a cigarette break, as opposed to someone who had been transformed by containment by plague with strain 412E into a gigantic carnivorous bug that was more powerful than a wild tiger. By the time Will Wallace's eye caught hold of the unnatural form of Travis Pope, he was already within striking range of Travis's lightning-fast, barbed arms. Travis Pope wasn't exactly hungry, but prey excited him as much as Eileen Pope's oviduct did. Travis fired his clawed arms at Will Wallace and rushed Will's rib cage. Try that again. Travis fired his clawed arms at Will Wallace and crushed Will's rib cage between them. Will Wallace did not even have time to gasp. Travis carried Will Wallace, who thrashed and kicked uselessly, into the pancake house. Travis Pope smeared Will Wallace's hair through the puddle of imitation maple flavored syrup. Then Travis ate him like a piece of French toast. Johnny McKeon managed to slam shut the thick, solid corridor that opened from his second-hand store into the back alley of Grasshopper Jungle. Johnny had stumbled upon the scene of cannibalistic bugs as big as grizzly bears that fucked and ate at the same time, which were the two things that bugs like to do. Hungry Jack was mere half-second too slow to catch Johnny McKeon. As Johnny bolted shut the door, Hungry Jack punched his spiked arms into the wood. The barbs on Hungry Jack's arms bored 2/3 of the way through the door. Bugs are not smart. Hungry Jack could have easily hammered the door into toothpicks. As soon as the door was shut, Hungry Jack forgot all about Johnny McKeon. Although he knew he was still hungry, Hungry Jack went back to wait on another turn with Eileen Pope. Eileen Pope and the two surviving Hoover boys were gone. Hungry Jack sniffed and sniffed at the air, trying to smell her, but Eileen Pope was no longer emitting the powerful hormones that had attracted him and the other males in the first place. Johnny McKeon was smart. Since the break-in at the Tipsy Cricket Lickers the previous Friday, Johnny had installed an alarm system that connected his business to the Iowa State Patrol. Johnny McKeon activated his alarm. The Iowa State Patrol, which operated from a substation in Waterloo, was alerted to an emergency at the Ealing Mall. A patrol car with a state trooper from Waterloo was on its way. It was not a good idea. At that moment, it was early morning in Germany. My brother, Eric Zerba, was lying on his back in a hospital bed. An intravenous needle pumped drugs and fluids into his arm, and other things had been taped to his body to tell whether or not Eric Zerba was still alive. A thin plastic tube had been inserted into the opening of Eric Zerba's penis so he could urinate. The tube was manufactured in Ohio. It was called a catheter, as opposed to a nightingale. Eric pushed numbers on the display of a cell phone. Eric Zerba was calling me, but I left my phone inside my house. Eric Zerba would not have known that cell phones do not work in Eden. Eric Zerba was also crying. Ingrid rolled herself out from her place at my desk. She went across the room and pulled a pair of my discarded blue Iowa plaid boxers out from under the bed. She sniffed the boxers and rested her damp nose in them. This is what Ingrid did sometimes when she was lonely, or when she needed to take her mind off shitting. It was Ingrid's silent way of kissing me. Ah Wong Sing, who most people called Louis, kissed Connie Breeze one last time before leaving the Del Vista Arms. Connie was in the shower. She was standing naked in the same grimy tub where I took a shower Tuesday before school. I'd also vomited in that bathroom. Louis pulled the yellow curtain back and looked at Connie Breeze. He wanted to have sex again, but Connie told him no, because her son would probably be home any minute now. Connie Breeze had to get ready for work. She took 2 Xanax as Ah Wong Sing left the apartment. When the song finished playing, Shan kissed Robbie and told him thank you for dancing. It was not the kind of kiss I'd hoped to see. Shan kissed the side of Robbie's cheek. I stared at Robbie's perfect neck and jaw. Shan's breasts looked especially full and heavy beneath the shimmer of her jumpsuit. Robbie was a little embarrassed. He knew what I was thinking. Robbie always knew what I was thinking. Robbie Breeze turned red when Shan kissed him. I lit a cigarette. Night. Oof. Really? Night.